Main character syndrome is a fitting diagnosis for a condition bred in the age of social media where attention is literal currency. Algorithms vigorously push whatever captures and retains the most amount of viewers, which unfortunately leads to a lot of
spit on that thing.
One of the primary characteristics of people who are chronically online is the psychological detachment from people in real life. Whether it's sticking their phone in front of someone's face for a photo or screaming in a public restaurant for content, there's a common thread of complete disregard for other people. There seems to be a complete lack of consideration for how our actions impact others, especially when the media is involved. It's just an inevitable fact that people act different when there's a camera on them. It's like the real world they're in ceases to exist and they turn into some type of virtual character. It's obvious that people have become completely indifferent to other people's reactions and opinions. We spend so much time telling people not to care what other people think that now we have to remind them to. This is made obvious by the sheer level of disrespect and rudeness in casual interactions that seems to be becoming completely socially acceptable. There's a cultural shift happening where people are treating others as expendable objects that are not deserving of kindness or basic respect. This dehumanized society has completely killed friendliness and politeness. Instead, every interaction is strictly transactional. The popular phrase of "I don't owe anyone anything" has been taken far too literally. I know it might be outdated news, but let's not forget the people that actually died at the Travis Scott concert getting stepped on to death as people rushed the stage. They were crowd surfing dead bodies out of the pit. We're breeding a culture that finds the life of fellow humans irrelevant and disposable. Just a few years ago, using the term NPC outside of a gaming context would leave people scratching their heads wondering what you were even talking about. Even now, I'm not sure that the average person knows what it stands for. They just use it as an insult whenever they don't like someone. NPC stands for non-playable character. There's a plethora of them in pretty much any video game. They're there to immerse the player into the world.
Ever since that Imperial Craven ran me through from behind.
They have no real autonomy and are programmed with a specific set of tasks and responses. The term has become popular outside of the gaming realm to describe people who lack independent thought or seem basic. They're kind of just bystanders going about life without thinking much. You might think this whenever you're driving behind someone going 10 under the speed limit, or when you're talking to some blue-haired astrology chick about the 19th Amendment.
50-50, man.
Anytime someone disagrees with you or is an inconvenience, your first instinct might be to call them an NPC. It implies that you are free-thinking and autonomous, and they're not. They're just some indoctrinated sheep living in their own little bubble. But this type of vernacular prevents us from recognizing that we too also live in our own little bubbles. Of course, everyone around you seems like an NPC when you don't know them. You're not connected enough to see them as anything other than a side character. Of course, everyone around you seems like an extra in the background of your movie, because in order for them to play a significant role in the film, you would have to interact with them. We tend to hold our individuality in high regard. Our individualism is what makes us unique, free-thinking, and autonomous. We have our own opinions, our unique personality traits, our selected hobbies. These things are what distinguish us from other people. Our individual interests are of paramount importance to us, and we hold those in higher regard than any type of collective interest. Sure, your entire family might want you to go to school for engineering, but you want to go to art school, and you are an individual, so you get to make that decision. There's absolutely nothing inherently wrong with individualism. I appreciate that I get to make my own decisions because it gives me a sense of self-efficacy. I can spend 12 hours of my day working or 12 hours of my day snorting cocaine. The situation changes as individualism is taken to an extreme. There's a fine line between exercising your own autonomy and doing something at the expense of someone else. When you live in a culture that popularizes phrases like "put yourself first" and "don't care what anyone else thinks," you end up with a bunch of people who pay no regard to anyone but themselves. There's such an emphasis on doing things for yourself these days that we forget it's cool to do some things for someone else sometimes. An issue arises when you begin to see yourself as some singular disconnected entity that is not a part of some greater collective interest. It leads to people becoming entirely self-centered, refusing to participate in anything that doesn't directly benefit them. It leads to atomization, loneliness, self-absorption, and heightened competition. Here's another thought. Maybe people are becoming increasingly self-obsessed because there seems to be nothing else to devote their energy to. People used to value family and make great sacrifices so that family could thrive. But the family unit appears to be collapsing from the inside out. Where's my dad? I grew up asking that question a lot. Oh, honey, he went out to get milk. Don't worry, he'll be back. He never came back. What's happening to the marriages? Where are the young relationships? There is no family unit. There is no unit at all except for the one-bedroom apartment unit you will live and die alone in. I don't want to sound all negative, but the feces are hitting the fan. Social media has replaced some very fundamental social structures, and it's created a hyper-individualistic society full of people who have nothing to live for but to satisfy their own selfish desires. Of course the world revolves around me. What else is there for it to revolve around? We don't have friends. We don't have purpose. We don't have a family. We don't even have a house. People are getting away with selling $1,000 courses on how to be hot. People are desperately trying to max out their stats so that they can be better equipped to survive the hyper-competitive environment that they're in. There's a growing emphasis on having an attractive physical appearance, hence the term looks maxing. And look, it's perfectly normal for young people to start caring about how they look. Everybody goes through it. You get a little bit self-conscious about your image, but you do what you can to fix it, and then you move on. But these days, every minute aspect of people's physical appearance is being obsessed over. Mewing for a better jawline, measuring your gonial angle, 6-step skincare routines, it's not normal anymore. People have become overly obsessed with how they look. But this is an unsurprising result of these visual platforms that are overtly superficial. I see these Gen Alpha kids on TikTok with a massive assortment of beauty products, and it just blows my mind. This is the last thing that was on my mind at that age. When I was a kid, I remember wanting to be something. When I grow up, I want to be a skateboarder. I want to be an artist. I want to be a rapper. What I wanted to be changed every 10 seconds, but the point is, I had aspirations of becoming something. For kids these days, their greatest aspiration is to say, when I grow up, I want to be hot. Do I even need to explain why that's a problem? Before the internet, you only had to compete with the people you were directly surrounded by. You compared yourself to people in your area, around your age, and adjusted accordingly. Now that the internet's here, your competition is literally worldwide. You don't just compare yourself to the people in real life, you compare yourself to the thousands of people you see online. And to make matters worse, these people you see online are likely already in the top 10% of attractiveness at the perfect angle with the perfect lighting, and the photo may still be edited on top of that. You got ops, but instead of your ops trying to come after you, they're mogging you with shirtless mirror selfies.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Attention is literal currency in an age where more views equals more money. An increasing number of people are craving to have eyes on them. It's actually incredibly perverted when you really think about it. This incessant desire to have people constantly watching you. It's a strange compulsion, but humans naturally crave attention despite what a threat it might be to their privacy. It's somewhat understandable considering people do typically desire to be heard, seen, and influential. What seemingly better way to obtain that influence than with the internet where billions are at your fingertips? Only, it's all a fallacy, because the engagement you receive online is much more shallow than your gullible brain could have ever imagined. The consumers of your content are rarely hearing or understanding you at all. You're one video in the thousands they've watched this week. A shallow snap judgment has been made about your content that will be forgotten about hours, or if you're lucky, days later. But unfortunately, most people find this lack of depth completely irrelevant. Once your brain receives a little taste of exposure, it incessantly craves more of it. You no longer care to be heard or understood, but just to be seen by as many people as possible. Rarely is the intent to have positive influence, but instead to amass views. Couple this with the fact that algorithms tend to favor controversial and shocking content, and you've just created a machine that incentivizes a lack of authenticity. Algorithms don't have humanistic values like real people do. Or should. It doesn't care about the moral implications of a piece of content or the potential negative impact it could have on its viewers. It strictly cares about virality because more views equals more displayed advertisements, which means more profit. This is the attention economy. It's one that values controversy over something thought-provoking or honest. It's one that commodifies human beings as products to be bought. With traditional forms of art, the artist themselves was rarely the primary focus. A painter painted so that the painting would be admired. A musician performed so that the symphonies would be appreciated. The focus of traditional art was for the product to be inspiring enough to have an impact on people. It wasn't for the focus to be on the artists themselves, but instead on the work they created. Dare I say, that is becoming increasingly rare in the age of social media. The art and the artist seem to be inextricably attached. Even when an artist deliberately hides an aspect of themselves to protect their privacy, that only leads the public to search harder to reveal the mystery. All eyes are peering in on you you wondering what you'll do next. The artist is a commodity in which the public demands of it more content for their entertainment. In the age of social media, people become machines, dehumanized virtual characters feeding the endless vacuum of content. Please be conscious of what you consume, and I ain't talking about powdered donuts, I'm talking about content. How many cat videos can you watch before your brain gets bored? How much rage bait will you click on before your conscience clicks on? Social media is simultaneously the greatest and worst thing that has ever happened to the modern world. If you don't get a grip on your consumption of it, it will consume you.